we do roll call, please?
Chair Paris?
Here.
Vice Chair McLaren?
Here.
Director Bryden?
Here.
Director Calandry?
Here.
Director Urosic?
Here.
Alternate Knudsen?
Here.
Alternate Martin?
Here.
Alternate Recca? Alternate Hogan? Alternate Kabar? Okay, in the room we have Jim Beck and myself, Josh Montoya, along with legal counsel Craig Parton. Do we have Arden Wells from Todd Grounder online?
Yes, I am here.
Thank you, Arden. And do we have...
Joshua, I'm sorry, this is Adrian Recca as alternate. I missed the roll call. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's fine. Thank you. And do we have Cameron Goodman from our legal counsel online?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Yeah, thank you.
Outstanding. And we have the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Kathy, second by Derek. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Public comments for non-agenda items. Are there any public comments for non-agenda items?
Not seeing any online.
None online? Okay, great. Go on. We're now on the consent agenda, and that's the financial report and payment of bills in minutes. Please go ahead, Derek.
So the minutes, I was not here for that meeting, so you want to separate that out. You have the votes.
That's a good point to bring up. I don't think you do have to abstain from just approval of minutes.
No, minutes, you can be a majority vote. That's one of the only things that we've agreed on.
Yeah, but
The consent agenda has two in a bill, but the other account would be at this point in time. In the minutes, and do you want to separate the consent?
Let's separate the issues here. We're on a majority vote in terms of approving the minutes. That's your prerogative. If you want to do it by majority, you can.
well, why?
His alternate just vote, make it simple.
Yes.
I'd look to chair to however you want to address that.
Well, I'll look to our attorney. I realize if someone's not there at the meeting, but they still can read the minutes and
the minutes
vote
are
to approve.
accurate. You're voting on whether the minutes are.
Yeah, you're not voting on whether you were there. And, yeah. So
Your position.
I've never been in a board where somebody, if they're absent from the meeting, can't vote to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
So I would just say, if you're comfortable,
I will trust the rest of the board that they're accurate then.
there you go.
All right.
And your alternate that was there. So, okay. Good discussion, no? We're on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Kathy, second by Russ. Is there any further discussion? Derek, did you have any discussion on financials?
No, sir.
Okay. And from the public? Seeing none? All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're now on the advisory committee written report. That's going to be on page 36. Dennis, are you going to talk to us about?
I'll preface it with the memo speaks for itself, as always.
Okay.
A couple places maybe need some emphasis. Back on the bills, one thing that got the committee's attention was the aging report. And what we asked for was a status on the accounts that are 90 days and over and $10,000 and higher. So that whittles that down to just 7 producers. I know one of them has a payment plan, but beyond that, I think there's a lot of concern on the committee that if those were current, we wouldn't be in this current financial situation.
Very good point.
And then when we get to whether to have a September meeting, I just want to make sure you read the concern by one of the small pumpers about the need for her replacement well at the top of the second page. And then, the committee is still concerned about what direction we're going to go for the 2024 administrator. And would hope to have some direction from the board coming out of closed session today.
Excellent. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Lamro, can I ask you to come back up? I have a question. On item number 10, in regards to the $17,706 that's being proposed, the advisory committee recommended tabling this item. It doesn't clearly, the memo doesn't give me quite the understanding I would want on why they're requesting that. Could you give me a little more insight from the advisory committee on that?
Well, that's similar. This information was presented at the advisory committee by Hallmark.
Okay.
With no chance to look at it or understand it. That's why the request to table it.
Okay. All right.
I think, and then there's some concern amongst some committee members that some of the requested amounts aren't a change in scope as much as a change in what it costs Hallmark to do, which may not be compensable, depending on how the contract is interpreted. It might have been higher cost than they anticipated, but they're still bound to it.
Okay.
You understand what I'm trying?
I follow you.
So I think there's some concern there that maybe needs a little more look at before this is approved.
All right. I apologize for the extra discussion on it, but I wasn't able to be on the advisory call due to travel at the time, so
No
just
problem.
wanted a little more clarity.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Dennis? Anybody online?
No.
Joshua? None? Okay. Good report, Dennis. Thank you. That brings us to item 7A, administrative report. Russ, Eric, administrator, Jim, Joshua.
All the items that we're going to be covering today were covered in the admin committee with just Russ. There were no key items that were identified. There was some concern for canceling the September board meeting, of course, in consideration of any pumpers that may need their applications approved in September.
Yeah, I just add, we had quite a discussion on what you'll be taking up under items 9 and 10, so we'll cover that during that discussion.
Great. Thank you. And now we're on item 8, update on administrative assessment fee for administering replacement water assessment. And that's going to be our staff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So a few months ago, the board had requested for staff to look into whether what it would cost for the administrative staff to develop a fee for recovering the cost for administering replacement water assessment. And staff came together and put together what I would call a rough estimate on what it costs. And the reason I emphasize on a rough estimate is because your consultants were not specifically tracking the time spent related to replacement water and what it takes to administer that to the landowners that need to pay replacement water. So in working with Todd, we found, took up our best guess at what it takes to administer this year's replacement water. And you'll find those numbers in your packet in the memo provided by Hallmark. And in the memo, we also advised that moving forward, your consultants keep track of any time spent specifically related to replacement water so that next year we can develop a more accurate representation of what it costs, and we can confidently say that we're covering all the costs and time spent on replacement water. In the discussion with the advisory committee, I believe it summarized it pretty well, saying we discussed being able to implement that replacement water assessment, the admin cost of it this year, but that would also require a little extra time spent by your staff and your legal counsel. And considering the tight budget that we have this year, we recommended implementing this next year. That way we can incorporate that in the budget that we're going to develop at the end of this year.
And what action does the board need to take to implement a fee for that? And that'd probably be a Craig question.
Yeah, I would look to Craig, but I believe that would take a public hearing, allowing for input from local stakeholders on the assessment that we're proposing.
I agree. I think that's what it would be. Public input, potential amendment.
So are you suggesting not even do public comment on it now in preparing or taking some action in the following year? Just have some discussion now, or even suggesting completely putting it off?
I always welcome input from the public, so that way we can incorporate that in next year when developing it. So I would never tell the public to not provide public comment, but my suggestion to the board is most certainly to postpone taking any action on this until next year. That way we can incorporate the cost in the budget.
I guess I have a question on that. We're tasked operationally to recover our costs that's being incurred. A public hearing is going to be additional cost of operating for this board. I guess I'm not seeing the need, unless you're telling me we're required to have a public meeting. They have a public comment period on the vote. I wouldn't mind postponing it to the next meeting to allow for somebody to comment during the public period, but holding a specific public hearing at the additional cost and everything, I'm just not quite seeing why we need to spend that money.
Yeah, so that's kind of like I should have said, does it really need to be a public hearing in the sense that we need to have a way to hear what people are thinking, because that certainly would be a long time to not even have any discussion. I'd like to hear what people are thinking.
So Craig, and Jim, help me with this. What I think would happen if we have consensus today to go forward with amending the regulations to allow for a fee for transfer water, we would put it on the next agenda as a public hearing, listen to have everybody give input, and then at the next meeting, we could take action for 2024. Is that?
My read of this was that there was not enough information to make an informed decision about what that extra cost is, and we need some time to assemble that data.
So Craig can fill you in on legal proceedings, and my point was to follow on with Josh advised the advisory committee, and now with us with the board, and that is additional work's required. If we have the information, additional work will be required by your administrative team to develop all the analysis that would go into calculating what's the appropriate level. So that's extra effort. The other point, and it's really the most germane, is we don't have sufficient data to make a well-informed recommendation to the board at this point. So we'd like to have a little bit of time to collect that into the next year. So maybe 6 months, we can get back to you, or whatever timetable you feel is sufficient to gather some background data. But we haven't been tracking our time to that level that we could provide an informed recommendation to the board or review that with the stakeholders. Or
so basically what I'm saying though is we're talking about two separate things: the cost of the public hearing versus the cost of having you guys do the analysis.
That's correct.
I am viewing the cost of the public hearing not necessary because we are tasked with recouping the cost with our positions on this board. So what would be the cost of the public hearing that this board would have to pay out to have that public hearing?
Yeah,
And are we required to have the public hearing?
I think what I'm saying is we don't do the public hearing now. We use this time to assemble the cost analysis.
Okay.
Have it come back, authorize that work by the administrator. And then we come back in 4 to 6 months as to do we have enough information to go forward with the potential amendment to the rules.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? Direction?
It seems every decision before the board tracks down or boils down to, do we have money? Our budget is so tight that I think this is an appropriate, what's proposed. I think it's entirely appropriate that we should. I want this to happen, and yet I can't find room in our budget to cause it, and I'm stuck there. And that may not be Shakespeare, but I think that's just about every problem we have on the board, including items we'll be considering with you guys here. So I don't know that we table this item when we figure out what's going on with the next item. I don't know.
Russ, what about getting feedback on what the cost is going to be to do this, and just kind of do a little analysis based off of the cost and what we think our ROI is basically going to be on the money we're talking about spending?
I think I'm supportive of that, and Hallmark business development costs. I'm not sure how you consider that. I think this ties into the future of the administrator as well and how we're moving forward. I don't think this is a 1 or 2 month thing. It would be a multi-year effort. I want to make sure there's continuity. There's just an awful lot of uncertainty.
Agreed.
But I'm absolutely supportive of doing this, however we decide to pay for it and whatever time we do.
As am I just want to get it done as cheaply as possible.
I agree.
So direction?
Yeah, it's a direction.
Or do you guys feel we need to table it until we figure some of the other stuff? Or do you want to ask them for a cost?
Yeah, I think it would start with them. If we want to move forward, it's asking them.
Well, I guess my question would be, are you, this to our administrators, are you anticipating there's going to be a cost to figure out what to charge for the time we spend on the transfer?
I would say most of the cost is going to be for legal counsel to sort of amend the rules and regulations and do that work. Most of the work in the memo is already complete, but like I stated before, that was more of an estimate. So to accurately go before the stakeholders and say this is the cost that we're going to be charging for RWA, I just couldn't confidently say that, but I'm looking more towards the cost for legal to amend the rules, do that sort of work. Yeah.
So my understanding, there will be no additional cost from Hallmark to come up with the recommended amount?
No, that isn't correct.
There would still be cost, but it would be.
And I'm not trying to be.
No,
I
will step in and
I want to clear, you know.
I'd be very clear because that's been an issue with the stakeholders in this board. There will be additional costs to perform subsequent analysis as we outlined in our memo that says we propose requiring the engineer and Watermaster and the admin staff to track their time.
And I'm going to say to my fellow directors, I don't know how we make a decision on this without knowing what that's going to be. And I don't see how we come up with good direction today. So probably, in my opinion, needs to be tabled.
The direction we are requesting today, and we are recommending, is that you add this for an item to be considered in the budget. That's what your staff recommended. That's as clear as I can be.
Okay, so that was going to be my recommendation. So I do agree with that. staff to incorporate this into the 2024 budget as we go through the line items and we decide what to do on each of those.
Is that a motion?
Clarification, or we can do it during discussion.
Okay.
I don't know, do we need a motion on this item or just consensus to give direction? What's your
I think a
preference?
motion makes sense.
So,
So it's clear what's going on in the budget.
very good. So Derek, your motion would be to incorporate the issue of the cost to our administrators for replacement water to be analyzed in our 2024 budget?
Correct.
I would like to have one amendment to it and report back to us as soon as possible on what that's going to be.
You don't need to amend
You
it.
don't
Okay.
We don't have a motion yet.
Okay.
So what else would you like in that?
I mean, I think that's it. I don't think you can report back. I mean, we haven't even reviewed a 2024 budget yet.
Well, no, that's right.
So the timing of that's already set up. I don't want to force an issue that then forces the 2024 budget to be done quicker.
Understood.
It should be.
Okay.
So I would keep my statement, which is now my motion, in that manner.
And the motion is
To incorporate this into the 2024 budget presentation and analysis.
So the motion by Derek is to incorporate, I guess, the study of the replacement water assessment administration fee into 2024 budget, and that's when we will address this.
That's correct. And we'll know the economics behind it, and we'll be able to then fund if we want to do that or not as part of the 2024 budget.
Okay, great. And is there a second to that motion?
Do we do public discussion first or after the second?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
A second by Brandon. And is there any discussion? Oh, Dennis, you're here.
Just to emphasize another part of the memo, I think it would be good to direct the administrator, the engineer, and legal counsel to start tracking their time for any dealings that they have with replacement water assessments. I think that's part of what Mr. Beck was saying, is to gather that information. So maybe include that in the motion so that it's clear that they're starting to track their time.
Okay, I think that's a good suggestion. I'm just trying to figure out if we need to incorporate that. Wouldn't that be, from what our motion is, isn't that taken that you would be doing that or no?
Chair Paris, I believe that would be part of our budget presentation.
Right.
You describing not just the cost, but what's going to happen.
What you've seen in tracking your time and the attorney's time and the engineer's time in anything to do with transfers, and maybe trying to recreate this last year. Yeah. Okay, so
It's not transfers, it's replacement water.
Right.
replacement water, yeah. If I misspoke, I'm sorry. That's what I meant, replacement water. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? And Joshua, you have the motion? Okay. All in favor of the motion? Oh, Russ?
I'm okay with this. I just had some clarifying questions
On this issue?
on this issue.
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, so we put this in, we have a laundry list of things that we're considering for the 2024 calendar year budget. The motion was to add this to it. If that were in the budget, this is a legal question to do, Craig. I think you want to do something to put this together. So how quickly could we put that replacement water for this water year? Basically, how quickly can that be put into place? What could be that revenue? The recapture. And to make it even simpler, if we don't act on it today, we lose money for an entire year. Is that question clear?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think the question is very clear, and yes, you will lose the opportunity to capture that this year with this decision.
Okay, and the amounts, just ballpark amount.
I would look at the memo, that's the ballpark amount.
Yeah,
That's what I would reference. Yeah.
So I'm fine with that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any discussion online?
Not seen mine.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously.
Okay.
That brings us to, did you have something else to say, Josh?
No, I'm sorry.
That brings us to item 9, update on potential cancellation of September board meeting.
Yeah, Chair Paris, Josh and I will tag team on this item and also item 10. We would suggest that we pick these items up concurrently because they're so interrelated. And so we put together some information that we'd like to run through with the board as you consider the 2 items. One, is there a need to or desire to cancel the September board meeting as part of an ongoing cost saving effort? And then consideration of action on the proposed amendment to the Hallmark contract. So we'll start by walking through a quick recap of what we covered at the board meeting last time. So Josh, if you want to go to the next slide. So this was presented at last month's board meeting. It's a summary of the year-to-date cost for the Hallmark contract on the administrative actions that we provide support. I'll stop right here because this is an important part of this analysis and discussion. There are 2 components to the work that Hallmark does for the Antelope Valley Watermaster. Today we'll be focusing primarily on the administrative services we provide to the board and the stakeholders. But in addition, we also review applications that are reimbursed directly, and that's handled from a separate pot of money. And we'll be getting back to that later as we consider this, but the items that you're seeing at this review and have focused on is the costs associated with the administrative services that the Hallmark Group provides for the Watermaster. So this is a quick summary of where we were at the end of July. You can see by going to the next graphic that we were trending over budget for the year. This is a quick pictorial that's similar to what we prepare for other clients that match monthly expenditures with total expenditures for the year. As you may recall, when we entered into the contract with the Watermaster, we expected that the first half of the year would have higher expenditures than the second half. So initially, we weren't particularly concerned because we understood, up that the stakeholders and board understood that was part of the completion of the transition services. And as we increased with efficiencies and got some of the practices and processes in place, that our costs would go down. And you can see that our costs did go down beginning in July. We had our invoice for that month was $10,477. So we alerted the board to this as part of the overall consideration that you took up last month as you adjusted and enacted a supplemental assessment. And part of the consideration was what's the rest of the year look like and what should this organization be doing to address those concerns. So as we reviewed where Hallmark is at on our administrative services, we recapped in the next couple of slides some of the reasons that we ended up over budget. I can go through those if there's questions, but they really get into additional hours required to provide the services that were in the contracts that were beyond and significantly beyond in some instances than was originally estimated. Our contract was developed using the best information that we could receive from Antelope Valley East current staff and Palmdale staff who have been providing these services. Appreciated those, but our experience was that the estimates that we used based on their best information were low for what was required. Could be a function of the estimates, could be a function of this year. There was just more work in some of those areas, hard to say. Also, we had the transition of the admin and advisory for Jacqueline Harris, our CFO, is leading the economic review of services for the Watermaster, attended meetings that she wasn't budgeted for. And this board's well aware of the beginning of the year are working out the kinks and advisory committee support that was not included in our original scope of work Also, we had a lot more questions on applications that weren't included in that scope, greater volume of correspondence. We participated with the legal team in the amended rules and regulations that were not included in the scope of work. And perhaps one of the more significant items was the actual length of the meetings that staff participated in have been significantly greater in some, at least the first half of the year, than was used to develop our estimated cost for services. So last month we were asked to consider options for mitigating costs for the rest of the year. The Hallmark team, this is what we came up with. The board asked us to consider whether we go dark for September. So one item would be to cancel the September board meeting. And as a reminder, and as we look at the cash flow for the rest of the year, there is no November board meeting. That was anticipated in the original schedule for this year. We also suggested that we cancel in-person office hours in Palmville for the remainder of the year. So on board day, Josh is here and he stays after to answer stakeholder questions. We're not recommending that that be changed as Josh is already here. But Josh also comes down a separate day of the year and a separate day of the month and is available for in-person meetings. He still would be available, would just save the commute time for Josh if we eliminated the in-person aspect of that. Josh is always available to answer questions. And he does, and he gets questions all the time, not just during those designated office hours.
So Jim, the recommendation would be Joshua would always be here after the board meeting to answer any.
Sorry, just to clarify, we also recommended for me not to be here after the board meeting schedule. But if a stakeholder has a question for me after the board meeting, I'm always happy to answer those questions. Right, but not to, and the reason for this suggestion is because I would say 8 times out of 10, there's usually no stakeholders here, and I'm sitting here for 2 hours working on other matters related to APWM, but typically I don't have any stakeholders come in to.
That's on your office hour other than the board meeting date, right?
Both days.
Both
I
days,
typically don't have anybody coming in, and when I do, it's scheduled. So our recommendation is I can work with stakeholders who want to have that face-to-face interaction and have them come on board meeting days. Or if they prefer, we can have a Zoom meeting.
You can have a Zoom meeting, yeah.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
So
It's really a recommendation to forego the drop-in aspect of those meetings. So Josh, you schedule a meeting, Josh is available. If he's here, he'll meet with you in person, or you can Zoom or call, whatever is convenient. But it's particularly the additional travel required for the day that is outside the board meeting is really the most significant cost savings this group could realize.
Understood. Joshua, what is your availability during the week if people call in, or how do they make an appointment with you?
Yeah, stakeholders usually reach out to me via phone call, and if I'm available at that particular moment, then I'm always happy to take their call. The only reason I wouldn't answer a phone call is if I'm already in a meeting.
Right.
But I always tell the public and any stakeholders that I speak to, if I don't, take your call at that moment, please leave, your name and number in the voicemail, and I will always return your call. And I encourage them to also send me an email because I'm most responsive in that way.
Good.
Yeah.
And from all information I've gotten, that's working out real well for us and you. And I haven't heard of any complaints regarding not being available. So do you foresee any issues if we agree to cut off your Palmdale Day and only have in-person meetings on the day of our Watermaster meetings?
No, I wouldn't see an issue. Like I said, most of the people who come in to see me during those designated hours are people who I've already spoken to and asked me, when will you be available? Because I can be there. So I wouldn't see that being an issue now.
Okay.
thank you for that extra clarification, because I'm just thinking of the person too that may not even be on the meeting that is reading that and, thinking that they would be cut off, for their normal being able to contact you. And so that is really good to understand that, because in any way, we don't want to hinder anyone from getting their questions answered or anything like that. So good questions, and thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, the last item, and it's probably the most drastic, is to have me participate in these meetings remotely, kind of like what Phyllis does and the Todd team. My commute is 4 hours. So that's, if you have 2 meetings, that's 8 hours of my time that you'd save by doing that. That's a significant change, but you asked for recommendations and thoughts to.
And you would be comfortable with doing that?
Yes, I do that for other organizations that I provide these similar services.
And Joshua would be here for
Joshua
meetings?
would be here.
Yeah. Okay. Good recommendations.
So with those, if the board elected to implement those suggested changes, we did come up with projected costs for our administration services through the end of the year. And you can see the significant declines in the monthly actuals. Still, even with implementing that, the anticipated task order or cost over our current task order is $20,393. So that gives you a feel for the difference between the authorized expenditures to date and what we're projecting where we'd end up, even with these implemented changes. We're not recommending a task order for $20,393 be executed. We are looking at the next item, which is, as I mentioned previously, Homework also provides the services related to application administration. That's Josh's work in handling applications. And you can see by this summary what we've actually billed versus the revenue. And so we've billed about $3,300, $3,400 and have received $6,000. And so there's a net positive of $2,688 in that activity. Now, before anyone gets really excited, or before Hallmark got really excited and said, like, wow, we got a windfall, that's not the case. That $2,688 really goes to the cost that's non-reimbursed, which we did not and is not considered in the application. So, for example, someone's considering doing an application, but they haven't determined whether to do that. They call Josh, talk to him for a couple hours, and then they elect not to do it. Josh has just burned 2 hours of his time. It's not reimbursed and not in that. So that's the way that agreement was set up, and that's the way that fee is. So we absorb that, and that gets cost somewhere else. So we're recommending that we take the $2,688 that could be viewed as overage and use it to apply it to the $20,000 to offset those costs. And so the recommended task order would be to authorize an additional $17,706 worth of work for the Hallmark Group to complete the work with the implemented recommended changes. If you go back to that, the next cell, we did get asked, well, what happens if, let's see, I'm trying to, that gets us to the 17,706. And then if we go to the next one of the questions we got asked, if we don't implement any changes and we have the September board meeting, what would that number be? And the task order would be at $26,001. And Josh, I can't remember, we went over this yesterday. Is that reduced? Is that with the 2,600? Mm-hmm. So that's net after reducing it by 2,688. So it gives you a feel for the swing between the 17,706 and then the 26, so about a $9,000 difference if you don't implement the changes that we're suggesting be considered. With that, we have the original cash flow that we presented And boy, if you can read that, you're doing really well again. But you can see this is the cash flow that we presented at the last board meeting, no changes. And it showed that after the end of the year, if you go to the bottom line, it projected a cumulative contingency of about $71,000 at the end of the year, and adjusted cash at the end of the year about $21,000. So those last two lines are really the key ones to look at, and that's what was reflected in last month's board meeting, and that total was based on contract administrators total of $207,000. Contract administrator component is not just Hallmark, but includes anticipated costs from Palmdale and AVIC as well. And we went through that last month, but if you're like me, you may have forgotten that. So that if we revised Hallmark's contract and added the additional $17,000 into that category, you can see we'd finish with a total adjusted cash flow at the end, cash at the end of the year of a little over $3,300, assuming we have $180,000 reserved for the first 3 months of next year. I like to say the cash flow is that accurate that you can get down to the dollar. So it's not, these are our best estimates and relatively conservative, assuming things like the engineer and legal teams go to their limits and stay at their limits, and that AVEC and Palmdale bill at anticipated rates. But that gives you a feel for the swing that these implemented changes would reduce that cash on hand by $17,000. That's where that money would come from. The last item is 17. What are our recommendations? We'd recommend that you implement cost-saving measures that we presented. One of the questions that Craig can answer that I can't is how does that impact anyone that has pending applications, transfers for approval? Is there any risk or impairment to us implementing that in the interim? And then we would also recommend that we authorize the task order for $17,706. And I'll just address a couple of questions that have come up. One is Hallmark agreed to a certain price and they ought to stick by it. I totally honor that if this board and the stakeholders remember the second half of that, which was if you stay within the assumptions that we presented and don't increase the work, we'll stick to that price. That hasn't happened. The other thing is let's go back and argue the contract with Hallmark. That's not how I usually manage. I usually work with clients that are looking to work out things amicably. If you want to get into a contract back and forth, we can do that, but this will be the last time you'll do it with this consultant. That's not the way I deal with clients. It's not the way Hallmark team deals with clients. We expected going into this that we'd have a good back and forth with this board, with the stakeholders, to arrive at a good position at the end of the year for a startup organization. If that's not been satisfactory and this group elects not to continue with our services with this team, it's okay by me. But I really will not be engaged in a back and forth contract battle with this group of the stakeholders. We'll complete our contract and we can move on if that's the best decision. I'd like to continue. We think we've done a good job and been trying to work within this. The other thing is what Hallmark does eat cost. And we are not billing 100% for every second we pick up the phone. When we prepare task orders like the one that you are considering today, that is on us. That is business development. It's typical consultant work. That's what happens. I know stakeholders are very sensitive to any cost. They're sensitive to the level of services. I get that. It's an interesting balancing act. We've been responsive to the board's direction and accommodated that as best we could. So that's kind of where we're at today. I'd be glad to answer any questions, provide any additional feedback to what's been presented. Josh has tag team, so if you have questions for him, he'll answer those as well.
And while the board is considering canceling the September board meeting, if you did read the advisory memo, you might have noticed that one of the landowners specifically stated the need for the September board meeting for the replacement well application. But I've been working with that landowner for the past week or so and had a phone call with her, and she informed me that she will not be submitting an application and it will be delayed by a few months. So canceling the September board meeting won't specifically harm that landowner who has called for the need for the upcoming board meeting.
Do you have any other ones that you knew that are in that similar situation that are that close and would be?
I haven't seen any specific applications who have indicated the necessity for their application to be reviewed and approved as soon as possible. This has been having a discussion with me. What can I do to make this go as fast as possible? But like I said before, they already clarified this morning in discussion we had that they will be taking a different route. So that necessity has sort of disappeared.
Thank you for that.
If I could add one more comment, I just forgot to mention this, and it's an important one. We understand there was considerable frustration at the advisory committee at the lack of timeliness for Hallmark providing information, and that we should have gotten this out to the advisory committee before the meeting. We didn't. That's on us. I understand that. I elected to keep it on the agenda because it allows the board the consideration. If it wasn't on the agenda, you couldn't. Also, I felt that Josh's availability and the opportunity for the advisory committee members to present their concerns and position to this board. Still, they had 2 additional meetings, but I apologize for us not getting that to the advisory committee on a more timely basis, but it's such an important issue. I chose to go ahead and allow for this board to have that discussion and that consideration.
So on the year-to-date cost for Hallmark graph, the 191,650 budgeted includes all the amendments we've already done, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And have we gotten the supplemental assessment out? I think we did. I've heard from people that those have gone out.
Yeah, they were mailed early last week.
Okay. And have we started collecting from that yet, or is it too early for that to happen?
I believe it's a little too early to determine where we're at with the supplemental assessments.
Okay. And if we are to approve this additional funding, it looks like that will come within our 2023 budget as revised with the new supplemental funds. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And just make a quick comment. I think there's minimal risk of consequences from canceling the September meeting in terms of applications. But remember, we've got 10 resolutions on the list for this meeting. We'll have 20 in October. We don't have a meeting in November, and we have a special meeting in December. So 2 meetings between now and the end of the year if we cancel September.
So we almost have to wonder how much are we really saving because the length of the other meetings
Well, what
or preparation.
here's a question I have. When you're talking about savings, you're looking at your savings, but are you also looking at the savings we have theoretically from the engineer's time, the attorney's time, and all that? Is that built into this assessment?
This was strictly looking at
Hallmark's time. Okay.
But you are correct that it's the push and pull that the board is identifying, that whenever you cancel a meeting, it lengthens the subsequent ones.
It lengthens it, and the work is still going on behind the scenes, but there is the savings of the hours involved for all staff in that meeting, in that September meeting.
That's correct. And you did, for the hallmark analysis, calculated the savings in preparation for the different meetings.
For the different meetings.
So now you're into one meeting prep.
But from a budget perspective, there should be a greater savings than just how it impacts your budget. It will should be a greater savings for our entire budget.
That's correct.
Potential.
It's one less board document for legal, but for the attendance at that meeting gets lengthened. You save travel time for Craig, that type of thing. So we did not do that detailed analysis. We were focusing on the hallmark cost.
Understood.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it isn't a good idea, but I just feel like we have to really think what it actually means, and so that's why I'm asking some of those questions, just to.
Okay. Let's have a discussion. What's your thoughts? I think this is important enough that we should go, everybody should comment and then ask for the public's comment.
We're here to service stakeholders. We need to have our meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think we should cancel the September meeting.
But the other cost savings, everybody's fine with?
I'm fine with those.
Well, and I can, on the cost savings analysis that were done here, I mean, I see there's a comment here on page 53 about Jacqueline Harris's time spent on because of the audit and cash flow issues. My recollection was that there didn't get done that paid for that. And you guys come to us with an out-of-scope work request that was about $5,500 to pay for that.
Yeah, that was for the work done to take care of the audit, but I believe I'd have to look back at the analysis that we did to determine whether we incorporated all of Jacqueline's time in the previous board meetings in discussion and the board meetings subsequent to that, including the admin committees.
I'm of the opinion it needs to be tabled per the advisory committee's request to come back with further discussion from our advisory committee.
Well, they made a recommendation too, as well.
Go ahead, Russ.
Yes, now I'm on chair second.
No, it's okay.
The chair and vice chair speak last.
Thank you. Good comment.
Tennessee Advisory Committee, I remember during the admin committee, had some strong thoughts. Can you remind me of those were?
Aside from what's in the memo?
Yes.
Well, perhaps for all of our viewers,
Well, I think there's some questions as to, Mr. Beck addressed it somewhat, as to whether some of this stuff is based on assumptions that were not fulfilled. I guess things cost more than they were assumed to cost, and whether from maybe a legal standpoint, those are something that we need to pay for or not.
Specifically, though, this September meeting, aside from the cost, was there a concern with canceling that?
Not so much we didn't talk about that. I think the concern would kind of pivot on where the board comes out after closed session and the direction for the 2024 administrator.
I thought that was all that. What I remember hearing at the admin committee was that they would oppose canceling the September meeting. Something wrong about that. Was that a lesser
Direction from the.
I believe they thought the meeting should go on that it was contracted for, and it had been under their contract. They said they would do that.
Okay, so I'm absolutely wrong. Okay, that was all the questions. Okay, so the two questions that were asked at the time, the cost savings and the pension. I have no issue with what Jim has proposed. I'm supportive of that. In terms of the meeting, but I think having the meeting is the appropriate thing to do.
I agree.
I'm in favor of all the cost savings. The meeting is, I'm torn on that. I think this board needs to service the community. That's been our goal all along. So what is the recommendation if the meeting goes ahead with, what would the adjustment need to be for you guys? You have that number?
Yeah. Josh has that number. If you give him a second, he's got a spreadsheet that he can modify, and he's prepared a summary based on that.
Did you use the slide?
Well,
that slide assumed you didn't implement the other two as well, so no cost savings. So somewhere between those two, but I can't remember the specific.
And also, if we had the meeting and we implemented where Jim wanted to just attend by Zoom, there's going to be a cost savings there. If we implement Joshua not having to be here except for the day of the meeting, so that's right.
That's the analysis he's done, and he's pulling up.
That's it, man.
And while we're waiting for that, I think I heard very clearly that we could make this adjustment and still stay within our anticipated budget and still have a cash reserve to start the next year, right?
That's correct.
And
Thank you. Is it over?
and then for conversation's sake, to give Josh some more time, on the 2024 budget, you're putting in anticipated $190,000 for contracted administrator. Is that an assessment of what the cost would be to this board for next year for your services, Jim?
That's correct. That's our best estimate at this point. But we did not roll any of the assumptions forward. So as I've said on the cash flow, like once you get past the second year, it's kind of tougher to dial in, but that's our current estimate, and we did not adjust that to reflect the economic. We did not consider that those would be going forward at that same rate.
Say that again.
We did not, in those budgets, we didn't reduce them down. For example, if we were to implement those changes of Josh's hours.
Josh one day and
or 10 meetings instead of 11. So that those had the same assumptions as the previous months.
So it actually could be less than the 190.
It could be,
but likely not over if we implement those savings.
I'm not going to prejudge what this board will do to the budget, because you've got a number of items that you've asked us to place for your consideration for next year's budget. So the 190 was based on what you authorized this year prior to this board meeting.
Understood.
So it could be different.
When do we look at next year's budget?
It's coming up in the next couple of months.
Like our September meeting, or
it'll be the October meeting. Is when you took it up last year.
Yeah. Okay. Drum roll, Josh.
Yeah, it would be roughly 21,937 for the.
Okay. So my input is I'm in favor of all the cost savings, except for I think we should have a September meeting too, and it looks like that's the consensus of the board. And if that's the case, then I think the action before us is your amendment 5 would be to approve $21,937 as extra administrative charges to finish us for the year at this time?
Yes, if the board elected to have the September meeting, that would be the revised number that would be required for the task order.
Okay.
I did have one question. I looked at council in our rules and regs that costs are supposed to be our cost per application. So that excess income that we have in the application form, can we use that, or how should we think about that? Technical. So maybe Jim, you're the one. Between the two of you, how would you like to answer that?
Here's what I heard first before they answer. I heard that their actual costs for administering those are actually probably greater because of the time spent by Joshua on the calls and information he provides for the people who don't vote forward.
I'll get more technical there. We're then asking an applicant that actually submitted something to subsidize the ones that did.
And that's a good question for Craig.
That's not my understanding of how we operate on the application. Reimbursement of actual costs.
Sorry if I could also jump in. When I am charging for an application, it is all the way up to the point of I get questions, I get the application, I send it to Todd. If Todd has additional questions, I relay it to the applicant. And once Todd sends me the applicant in preparation for the board meeting, that's when I stop charging it to the application bucket, because at that point, now I'm in preparation for the board meeting. And so if you would like to think of it in that aspect, technically the applicant is not being charged for my time to put their material together, develop their resolutions, get it signed by the chair, scan them, send it back to them, answer any questions, get the follow-up to see if they put their flow meter on, get those documents. And there's a lot more to it, especially with new production that isn't necessarily charged to that specific bucket. I mean, you could also look at it in that aspect.
But and I understand where Derek's at with this. I understand that operation. I understand it, but we just showed a slide and documented the fact that we charge $2,800 more than our cost, and that could come back and get us real quick. So how do we resolve this? Because it clearly states in the judgment, I was talking about the four corners of the judgment, that we can't charge more than the cost, and we just provided a slide that showed we did. And that's a problem.
My understanding is we're not charging extra costs based on the generalized extra expenses that have occurred. That it is related to the application before us. If that's not happening, that's news to me.
Well, then I would say our administrator needs to change their slide to show that the cost at the end is zero. Because if that is the case, we shouldn't show a plus $2,800 on our slide to the view. It just shouldn't be stated that way. The actual cost needs to be stated.
We will modify our slide to more accurately reflect how those funds
Yeah, because you bill for the cost, so that's the money you're bringing in.
And we will get with council to ensure that we have appropriately documented that.
Yeah, that perfect. But we're still so back to Derek's question then. 21,937. If we provide that amendment, that will get us through for you guys for the rest of this year.
That's correct.
Eric Harris, I have a further point of discussion I'd like to voice before we proceed.
Sure.
I am not prepared to make an action on further expenditure without our advisory input. As of right now, they've requested further expenditures to be tabled for their review. I'm fully prepared to make a vote on the September meeting, but I just don't see how I can go forward on voting on a future expenditure without input from the advisory. And as Dennis stated, they did not feel they had adequate time to give us their opinion on it.
Understood. Consensus?
I guess my question for is that for us was.
Yeah,
Is spending more than.
because we've committed to a September meeting without the budget, the administrator.
Well, we still have enough funds for the administrator until we get through our September meeting to make a decision.
That's correct.
Yeah, so.
If you do not take action at the September meeting, you will be out of funds for the fall.
We may not see you in October, November, or December. I agree with Brandon. I think we need to wait until the advisory committee comes back. They've asked us to table it. I think that makes sense.
I appreciate that, supportive of it. I have all sorts of legal questions, contractual questions as well.
Mhm.
I think are probably appropriate for the closed session.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And it's very important that they have their input, and all this is raising lots of questions in my head.
Let me ask you a question, Russ. You said you had questions on this for legal side. That can fall under our closed session item.
Yes, but in open session, we have a number of pending litigation matters. And frankly, it was going to be part of the discussion of what happens when I need to.
Okay, very good.
But big help. Anything from the public? So, we're not taking action now on the amendment number 5. Craig, you want a motion to table that, or if we just don't take action, and I'll just say put it back on the agenda for our September meeting?
We table it, we want it on the agenda for next month.
So if the action, I can just say that it's going to be on the agenda. We don't need a motion to table it, do we?
No.
Josh, will you put amendment 5 on the next agenda?
Yes, will do.
I'm trying to save time. Number 11, update from USGS on the groundwater monitoring program. And who's running that?
Yes, we do have someone from USGS who will be giving a presentation. Let me double check that he is online.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, perfect.
Yes, we
yes,
can.
we can.
We hear you well. Do we have slides or anything, or where are we?
I will have something for you. Mind you, I'm not the specialist or the researcher here, but I am. My name's John Newby. I'm the field office chief for the Redlands field office. And I run day-to-day operations for a group of technicians that go out and do, the hydrostatic sounding for you and the water sampling. I mainly deal with the kind of the when it gets done and who does it. And I work with, obviously, the cooperators like Matt Knudsen on getting the contracts out. But I do have some stuff I can show you. It's not going to be a long presentation, but I do have some stuff I can show you. Hang on here. Close this down. And then I'm going to put, I apologize. I thought I could get this link shorter. I'm going to put a link in the chat. Oh, come on. Come on now. Let me see if this will. Oh. All right. It says my link is too long. I had trouble shortening the link.
If you'd like to email it to me, I can distribute it to anybody that requests it.
Oh, yeah, that would be fine. Let me share my screen because I have the destination of the link here. Screen 1. Yeah, here we go. So my link will take you here. And it, I guess I'll have to email it to you. Do you want me to email that now so you guys can look at it, or try to do something, or you want me to email it to you at the end of the thing here?
You can email at the end of the board meeting.
Okay.
Distribute that.
And John, what is your last name?
Newby, Newby.
Well, great. And thanks for joining us, John. And go ahead.
All right. Can you still see the screen with the map?
No.
No.
Oh, I took it off the wrong one here. Hang on. Let's go back so I can work the big screen.
We can screen now.
You can see the map now? Okay. So the link I have will take you to this map, and this is a map of probably more, because I'm sure a lot of some of these wells are probably not on your list anymore, but because I think this list was locked in about 2014. But irregardless, it does contain all the well sites that are in your contract. Now it doesn't discriminate. I think you can probably discriminate with water quality and no, I guess not. I guess just the groundwater. All right, I apologize. Looks like they're all groundwater sites, and we sample the groundwater sites, but we only sample about, say, 10 or 11 per year. The rest are all hydrostatic soundings. But what I can do is when you take the link, you can zoom in on map wherever you want to go. I have a particular site up here, and this one has both water quality done to it and water levels. And this is probably what I got here, the best way to get to your data that you can see. What it does, it takes you to the summary of all available data. And so what you want to do is, we'll just start with the water level measurements. Click on that. It will default and bring you up a plot with the water levels. And it will bring you up for the entire period of record. And from here, you can go a lot of different ways. You can ask for it for a table. You can do like an imported file, whatever you want. You can also look, and it'll take you back to the location map. It'll take you over to the water quality, which we're going to go to now. All right, so you can see from here, you can choose a lot of different things, how you want to look at your data. Let's see if I can just get it to bring me all of the data. Hit submit. Let's go with the table. Table, give it to me. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so we have a table of all the water quality, the whole period of record. Mind you, this one's probably looks like only about, maybe 14 years old. But what it does do is we'll display all of the findings and the values we have for the various water quality constituents. And in your case, we do quite a bit of constituents, as you can see.
Can you go a little slower? I want to see some.
Sorry. Yeah, sure. Is there a particular
nitrates?
Nitrates. All right, here we go. We got a nitrate right here. I'll kind of try to throw it in the middle there for you. Now, I'm not a water quality person, so I can't break down what is what. Hopefully, maybe you looking at it might have a better idea. Were those the nitrates you were interested in seeing?
Yes. You can continue on. Just go slow, please.
Yeah, no problem. Mainly just kind of highlighting that we do sample for quite a bit of constituents. Good gravy. That thing does go on for a while, doesn't it? But mainly, yeah.
Can you click on that summary of all available data, or is that what we're on?
Sure. Yeah, that's where the map link will take you back to. Okay. Kind of give you a quick breakdown. And you can also see in the description, it will give you some basic, well depths, hole depths, LSD, that kind of stuff to give you kind of all this. Mainly what I'm here to do is show you how to access the data that you are paying for. Now, mind you, the data is pretty much limited to whatever that water quality data is, and that's only about, on average, about 10 or 11 sites a year that we do for you guys. But the water levels, mind you, is several hundred. And we're going to go back to the location map. Oh, this just takes me to the one site. Okay. I don't get to play around with this enough.
Contract what you do for us. Can you introduce some context to this item?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I don't do the whys, but I do operate every year and send technicians out to make these water lifts. I'm really just mainly the day-to-day operator of the thing here. In context of why you guys are doing it, I can't tell you. I would need my specialist to be able to talk about this kind of stuff.
How about what is our contract with you? What have you been contracted to do for us?
Let's see. Annual water levels, hydrostatic soundings, water quality samplings, and then throughout the basin, yeah, and a few semi-annual events as well. That's it.
And I have for you is you're saying your well depth's at 500 feet. You don't punch into the second aquifer or the lower aquifer to about 800. So how are you guys accumulating data from the lower aquifer as well?
Probably with wells that are going into the lower aquifer.
So you do have wells that are deeper than 500 feet?
Oh, yeah, sure. We have wells. Okay. You guys have wells, yeah, they're deeper than 500 feet. I'm sure we could probably fish around and find one, especially in the north end. In the north end of things up there, as you are kind of getting up by the 58, it definitely tends to get a little deeper. And as you get over a little bit towards Tehachapi, the wells start to get, it takes a while to get down to the water.
I'm good at.
We thank you for explaining it to us.
Yeah.
And John, I would imagine our engineer uses this data for the modeling that they're working on right now.
It would be my assumption. Yes. Again, I'm not the research grade guy. I'm mainly just running operations. I mean, I can tell you kind of where we have deeper wells, where we have some shallower wells. I have no idea what constituents are of the water quality. I tried to get someone in research grade or specialist grade to come join me, but everybody's out in Phoenix this week.
Understood. And Derek, go ahead. You have a question?
I'd make a suggestion is maybe we get with the Watermaster engineer and USGS and come back to us with an update of the usage and viability of what we're seeing here, to how they're interacting into the modeling and their reporting and analysis.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Great suggestion. John, we want to thank you for the time spent and showing us how to use this program and get into it. And Arden, did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate how important these data are to our work as Watermaster engineer. The USGS monitoring wells are really the basis at which we can provide information for the model, but also perform our water level analyses in the annual reports. When we do them, the information that are provided from agencies are also very important, but the USGS has dedicated monitoring wells that, except for the small amount that's pumped to collect groundwater quality data, they're not pumped. And so we know that they're providing static water levels. And this is just really important. And also having this wide distribution and large number of wells is really, really critical to be able to monitor the conditions in the basin.
And Arden, I know from past presentations that you guys have made, you are using these wells in the model that you've been working on for the last year.
Yes. So the water levels from these wells are used to show past conditions and also utilized to in the calibration and parameterization of the aquifer, and to use the model to develop water budgets.
Arden, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Artie and I do have a request, and two questions I'd like answered off of these USGA or monitoring wells is what's the average well depth on the monitoring wells, especially in the central area of the valley? You know, also, if we have anything that can be shown to us on any potential nitrate plumes or contamination issues in water, such as arsenic that's been tracked throughout the valley.
Arsenic or chromium-6 or whatever we got.
Exactly.
Okay, yes. So I will.
You don't have to do it right now, but it'd be nice to have it.
Yes, and since I can't see everyone's face, is that Director Calandri asking?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, super. How about I follow up with an email showing the water or the well depths, and also we do look at water quality in the annual report. So, especially using the monitoring wells, I'll put together some maps for you showing those, and that will be pretty quick and easy.
All right, I'll give you two locations that I was specifically interested in, as well as the Foxfield area of the basin on G and 50th West, as well as anything along the 50th Street corridor from Avenue M to Avenue E.
Can you repeat that? So G and 50th West is the first one.
That's correct. That's it. You can use Foxfield Airport as a central.
Foxfield Airport. Okay, great. And then anything along 50th Street corridor?
From Avenue M to Avenue E.
E?
Yes.
Okay. Great. I'll get those two.
East on that 50th East.
50th East. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, John, we really thank you for the presentation, and Arden, thanks for jumping in, and it's gonna be the Arden Show pretty soon anyway.
It's my favorite show. Great.
So, John, we really appreciate it, and we're going to move on to item 12.
Alrighty, thank you guys.
Thank you very much. And item 12, consideration possible action on new production application, and that's the Arden Show.
Okay, excellent. So the first application is for the Berlanga well, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name. This is for a domestic well in the central Antelope sub-area, and they're requesting 1 acre foot per year for a 1,000 foot single family home. And so the advisory committee unanimously recommended this application for approval, and Todd Groundwater found that due to the small amount of water and agreement to pay an RWA, that the potential for material injury is negligible. Are there any questions?
Any questions on 12 item A? Hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve resolution number R2363? Motion made by Kathy, is there a second? Second by Russ, is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R2363, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Arden, we're on item B.
So the next application, similarly for Mr. Wiedewilt, is a 1 acre foot per year new production application for domestic use in the central Antelope sub-area. So this is for a 1,500 square foot single family home that will also have a 1,000 foot garage. And they want to have some trees, a vegetable garden, and once again, the advisory committee unanimously recommended this application, and Todd Groundwater finds the potential for material injury as defined by the judgment to be negligible.
Thank you, Arden. Any questions of Arden? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve resolution R2364? Motion made by Russ. Kathy? Okay. Motion made by Kathy, second by Russ. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R2364, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously.
Chair Parrish, I'll need to recuse myself on item 13.
Okay. And who's going to come into your place?
I believe Angelica is here and available.
Angelica, you want to take Mr. Calandry's place? Thank you. And now this is consideration possible action on transfer application. Let's start with R2365.
Great. So this is a transfer application from Caruso Investments LLC to Tivoli Investments LLC.
Arden, can you speak into your mic a little bit more? We kind of lost you a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, very.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. So Tivoli is the successor to Caruso. The ownership and management will stay the same, and the water use will be the same on the same parcels. And any residual water will also be used for investment purposes. And so because this is a successor transfer and we do not anticipate water use or location to change as indicated in the application, Todd Groundwater finds the potential for material injury as defined by the judgment to be negligible. And this was also unanimously recommended by the advisory committee. Any questions?
Any questions, Board? And Craig, you have no issue?
No, I talked to Arden about the question of whether Tivoli would need to intervene to become a party. And they don't. They're successor in interest to Caruso Investments, so they are under the judgment party, subject to jurisdiction of the court.
Okay, very good.
No problem.
Okay, any other discussion? Is there a motion to approve 13A, Resolution R2365? Motion made by Rep. Wait. Second by Derek. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve Resolution R2365, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Yeah, that's the
Motion
wrong
carried
screen.
unanimously.
Yes, there it is.
Don't want
There's
the
a good
public
screen.
water providers to get all the motions. You know?
I know that, that's why I was holding back.
Now we're on Resolution R2366.
Great. So this is also a transfer from Caruso Investments to Tivoli Investments as successor in interest. And this is a one-time transfer of all of the carryover water. So that's 1,760.31 acre feet. And this combined with the permanent transfer fully transfers all of Caruso Investments rights to Tivoli Investments as the successor in interest. So similarly recommended by the advisory committee, and the Todd Groundwater finds the potential for material injury to be negligible.
Very good. Any discussion? Is there a motion to approve 13B, Resolution R2366?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Derek. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kathy. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. That brings us to item 14, consideration possible act on new point of extraction.
Brandon, coming back.
Oh,
Brandon.
thank you, Craig. Angelica represented you well, Brent.
Thank you.
And let's go on to item 14A.
All right. This is a new point of extraction application for Tudor Perini. So in April of this year, Caruso Investments transferred 1 acre foot of permanent production rights and 140 acre feet of carryover water to Tudor Perini Corporation. And so in this transfer, the Watermaster engineer recommended a few things before Tudor Perini Corporation could utilize this water. The first one was that Tudor Perini intervenes in the judgment, which they did. And the second one is that because the transfer did not identify the parcels at which the water would be used, we requested that before any production is used under Tudor Perini's rights, they would need a new point of extraction application to identify the parcels where the water would be produced and used, so that we would be able to conduct a material injury assessment. And so because they've successfully intervened, this is now fulfilling that second step. So they identified the parcels on which they would like to drill, to pump water and put the well. And the parcel is in the central Antelope sub-area. And they estimate that they would use about 2 acre-feet per year in order to provide water to an office and a warehouse and an equipment repair area. And so in reviewing this, we found the potential for material injury to be negligible because this is a small amount of water that would be produced every year. And this was recommended for approval by the advisory committee. And yes, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Arden. Is there any questions?
I need clarification on one thing.
Yes.
From legal. Craig, a family member of mine is the one that has supplied water to Tudor Perini for this project. I have no relation whatsoever to their request for a new well application. Am I conflicted out on this? Or?
No, we've dealt with that before in a memo.
Okay.
Back in 2022. Concerning board members' duties to recuse themselves.
Okay.
And we have a fiduciary duty to the basin, to the board, to the Watermaster. And if you feel that you cannot carry out those duties with respect to an item on the agenda, you may decide for whatever reason to excuse yourself and have an alternate vote in your place.
I'll stay on this one. This is just a well application, no transfer of water, so I'll stay on.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing no other questions, is there a motion to approve resolution R2367 for the new point of extraction? Motion made by Russ, second by Derek. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried unanimously. That brings us to 15, consideration and possible action on well applications. Looks like waste management's being pretty busy right now. So Joshua, you handling that? Yeah. And Arden, thank you for the Arden show. And you're going to come back up on the Watermaster engineer's report.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Paris. So Waste Management, Inc. owns and operates the Antelope Valley Public Landfill in Palmdale, California, and currently considering the purchase of an undeveloped parcel of a land adjacent to and north of the landfill currently owned by Phil Arkland. So they're wanting to put in these monitoring wells to determine whether it's feasible to be able to purchase this property and develop it for the public landfill. So all 5 applications are relatively the same. So I would recommend approving them concurrently, but you're more than welcome to separate them individually if you'd like. It'd just be repetitious information.
Are they on the same parcels?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a single parcel. Yeah.
Great.
I'll make the motion.
Let me check. Craig, you're fine with one motion to approve all resolutions?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve resolutions number R2368, R2369, R2370, R2371, and R2372?
So moved.
Motion made by Brandon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kathy. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve items 15, A, B, C, D, and E, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. And now we're on the administrator's report. Update on administrative activities.
No additional updates.
An update on office hours.
That was covered in an earlier topic, but so no further updates. It was the discussion as to whether you would like to continue with office hours in a drop-in fashion, or if you would like me to continue with having them scheduled. And the board elected to no longer have drop-in, and that they would only be scheduled from now on.
Great.
In an effort to save money.
And the scheduled appointments would be on day of board.
And that would be what I would try to lean the landowner for, but I'm always flexible.
Or by Zoom.
Or by Zoom, yes.
Thank you. Those were good recommendations. I think that'll work out well. Watermaster.
I'm going to share my screen real quick, and y'all need to tell me if I'm sharing the right screen. Can you see the full slideshows without the notes or anything?
That's a nice picture behind you.
Oh, okay, wait, share screen. Here we go. Okay.
Okay, we see the screen.
All right. And okay, now is it the full
You might want to, yes, there you go.
Okay, excellent. Great. So I first would like to share our new production and small pumpers summary. Last month we approved 2.5 acre feet per year. So now the total of new production in the basin since adjudication is 1,046.92 acre foot per year. And as we discussed last month, I think it's about 230 or so acre feet of that are temporary. And so due to Mr. Bannock's applications, which are over the course of a year. So as the periods where the applications state that he will be producing, when those periods pass, then we'll remove that amount from the new production total. Are there any questions on this?
Any questions?
How are we ensuring that he's actually stopping pumping?
That's a great question. So his wells are metered. He has been diligent about sending us his quarterly and annual production and his metering information. So he has been reporting, and we keep track of his production and making sure during the annual report that it is aligning with the approved new production periods.
Hey, thank you.
So this was discussed last month that we were going to submit the annual report to the court and to DWR. And so this is just a slide sharing that we did indeed submit it, and we have fulfilled our reporting requirements for the annual report and also for the Sigma reporting requirements as we need to do as an adjudicated basin according to Sigma. Are there any questions regarding this?
Question? Nope, we're good.
Fantastic. I don't really have any model updates to share this month. We're still in the process of updating the model, but over the past month have not been actively working on the model. The last note that I have is I just want to take a moment and introduce Maureen Riley to y'all. Phyllis and I, yes, if you're online, you can see her face on Zoom.
Being from the board.
Maureen has been working at Todd Groundwater for about 20 years and has extensive experience in water resources management, including work in adjudicated basins. She's worked with Mojave and Santa Maria, and she's also contributed to our annual reports over the last few years, providing data about land use and our most recent updates to looking at land use and water use for small pumpers. Maureen is incredibly skilled at developing efficient systems to ensure accuracy and really helping her clients be able to get the information and data analyses that they need in the most efficient and accurate way. And she's a joy to work with. And Phyllis and I have felt that, we're both hydrogeologists, and we do need an engineer to be in the Watermaster engineer role. So we're really excited to have Maureen join Phyllis and I on the Todd team as Watermaster engineer here. And I'd like to invite Maureen to introduce herself and say anything else that she'd like to the board here today.
Well, that was a great introduction, so I don't have anything to add. I'm excited to join the team working here at Todd to be on the Watermaster. And you guys have it covered with Arden and Phyllis, so this is just bonus that you get an engineer along with the rest. So great job, Arden, continuing working on Antelope. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Well, Maureen, welcome aboard, and we're looking forward to the Marine show in the festival.
I think the Arden show is much better. I'm happy to help.
Our Arden does do a great job. So thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Arden, this is Brandon Calandry. Got a quick question for you. Do you happen, in this, for some conversation sakes, do you happen to know off the top of your head when your guys' contract ends with us? What year? Because I don't recall.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Okay. We'll look into that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Arden.
You're very welcome.
And again, welcome aboard, Maureen. And then we'll go on to our general counsel's report. Now it's the Craig show.
Keep it rather brief. The litigation matters will be discussed in closed session. And there are a number of them. What is primary for the board is the review and comment on some proposed amendment to the rules and regulations with respect to a unanimous vote situation. We talked about this last month. There was a memo. There is a memo in your packet at the last 2 pages of your packet, which should look relatively familiar to last month's effort. Remember that we all think kindly of the fact that the judgment requires unanimous vote of the board to move forward in an affirmative way. And even if there's one vote against, that is terminal for the action that's being suggested if there's a no vote. Similarly, if there's an abstention or recusal, there isn't a unanimous vote of the board. And we had that situation in the last couple of months. And there was some interest in seeing about a possible, and this is possible, amendment to the rules and regs to address that situation. Last month, we suggested language that would allow a simple majority if there is an abstention or recusal and there's less than unanimous vote, whether the board members who are left voting can by a simple majority essentially vote in favor of the proposition. That got extreme reactions from a number of sources. I shouldn't say extreme, I say passionate response. from the advisory committee members, certain ones provided some input on that. There were members of the public, and I believe the Public Water Suppliers Council, who indicated that unanimous voting was at the heart of the judgment, and to alter it in any way was to fundamentally alter what the expectations of the parties were to the judgment. But remember, the judgment does allow this board, by unanimous consent, to identify specific issues or questions that they would resolve by majority vote. But because of that, that very strong opinion that we were not picking up the sentiment of the judgment by our proposed amendment to the rules and regulations, we revised the language somewhat to indicate that it's not a simple majority if somebody abstains or recuses. It has to be whoever's left unanimous on your topic. From what I understand, the advisory committee there was support for the idea at that level. It seems to thread the needle of both recognizing abstention, recusal creates a disruptive process in the voting for issues before the board, and yet requires those members that are left, assuming a quorum of 3, are unanimous in what they vote on as a result of the abstention and refusal. So this is just a opportunity for the board to review the language, give direction, get comments from the public, and we would then go through the formal process for amending the rules and regs. So that's my setup for the proposed amendment, and happy to answer any questions.
Craig, I have a question for you. You use the term terminal. It's terminal as it pertains to the vote here. If somebody in a scenario like that, that person would have the ability to appeal our decision to the judge, correct?
Any action or direction by the board that is adverse to a party allows the opportunity for a notice motion before the court. And we have that situation pending now.
I'm sure we'll be hearing public comment, if any, after the board's done.
Eric, go ahead.
Yeah. Greg, I think you incorporated my sentiments as well as I think what the spirit of the judgment was. It took into account, I don't think it was formalized and documented properly, if there was abstain or recusal, that this would address it in this manner, but still be unanimous for the remaining and still be a simple majority at the minimum. I hope we never get to where 3 people have to step down and their alternates as well, but I think this is great. I do as well look forward to everyone's comment.
Great. And Kathy?
I think this addresses it well.
Okay. Russ? And I agree with all the comments. I think this is something we should do. At the very beginning of this, when we were talking about the adjudication and putting this in, I was adamantly opposed to having a 5-0 vote. I thought at the very least we should have a 4-1 vote. I thought it was going to be impossible to conduct business with a 5-0 vote, but we've been here 7 years and have been able to survive and do well. So I think this is a good step forward. I would hope someday we gain enough trust in each other and the process that we could contemplate doing a 4-1 vote, just so that we don't have to continue tabling items to build consensus. But I also recognize that building consensus has been real important on this board, and it's worked out well. So those are my comments. I'm in favor of this. And so what action would you like right now, Craig, on this?
Comments from the public.
Great. Any comments from the public? Anybody on out there in computer world?
Not seen any online.
Nothing. Anybody here would like to make a comment? Seems like we have consensus for this, so, Russ? No, we would need to do a public hearing on this. And you just need our consensus, or do you want us to vote to go forward with the public hearing?
Vote to go forward. We need to post 30-day notice. So I'm not sure we can get it on the next board. Yes, we should.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a motion to go forward with a public meeting on changing the unanimous voting requirements under the rules and regulations as outlined in Craig's memo? Motion made by Derek. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kathy. Is there any? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Craig. And that brings us to number 19, board members' requests for future agenda items. I just want to make sure we're going to have Amendment 5 on our September meeting, correct, Joshua? Okay. And any other agenda items anybody wants to see? Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I know staff's wanting to bring together the budget for 2024 in October. I just encourage if staff can, and it will take up more time, that if there is a preview of that to give circulation in September, it may be helpful. I think as much as we fight through the economics of what it takes to run this board, the more time we have, the better we do.
Okay, good comment, Dirk. Anything else? And that brings us to closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So move.
Motion made by Kathy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to go into closed session, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We will go into closed session exactly at 12 o'clock.